All right. How you doing, Daniel?
Pretty good. Good to have you back here, Josh.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Hey, I'll tell you what, we're going to be talking about this great book, right? Awesome book. Can I say awesome? Is that a word? Awesomer?
I say awesome all the time, so feel free.
I mean, I put that in the cowboy lexicon because you wrote so many things, so I have to call this awesomer. But man, we're going to be talking about the day the Earth stands still, unmasking old gods behind ETs, UFOs, and the official disclosure movement. And let's just go right at it. Josh, are they coming?
Well, something has been here for quite a while. And for your listeners, I'll just say I just got over the flu, so my voice is kind of raspy, but I'm going to fight through it. And because I've been excited to talk to you, it has been a long time. And so people hear that that's what that's all about. So hopefully they will suffer through it with me. But yeah. Yeah, I think that there's been something here for a long time, and it's been interpreted in different ways in our more modern culture. If we look at this back from like ancient religions and stuff, especially in the ancient Near East, they used to see these things as we would say spiritual entities and things like that. And there's a rich history in that, but we've kind of lost that in our modern culture. Now we think, now that we live more of an age of materialism and biological fact over anything that we can't see, that now we tend to think of these things as something similar to us, just from another planet. So, but what's strange is, and I think that this kind of runs right in line with certain discoveries in quantum physics and things like that. We realize that our world isn't as material and solid as we think. So the culture changes a little bit, and it gets away from the materialism a little bit, more and more as time goes on. So now, instead of just being extraterrestrials, now it's generally getting more accepted that these might be extra dimensional, which is just a fancy term for saying spiritual. So we kind of come around full circle.
Right.
So it's really strange how this phenomena kind of mirrors the culture that views it. Now, I do believe that something is going on. I believe that there's a real phenomena happening. This isn't just in everybody's heads. This isn't just things that people are making up. I do believe something real is going on, but what it actually is, that's gonna vary depending who you're talking to, and we're all working from a very limited amount of information. So that's what we try to detail in the book and actually show how, with the official disclosure movement, the WikiLeaks and all the stuff that has recently come out, that we live in an age where the extraterrestrial idea or the UFO phenomenon is actually being taken seriously by major media, which has never happened before. Usually if it was ever covered on the news, it was kind of laughed and scoffed at, but now it's actually being taken seriously. So it's a really interesting time that we're living in.
Well, it is interesting times, and technology is speeding ahead, and this iPhone coming out with the facial recognition, it just seems like we're just right near the Minority Report. Where you're walking down the mall and every media is scanning your eyes. I mean, Apple's just a first. Everybody's going to have that. Your television's going to be scanning. You're doing facial recognition. I don't know if I'm all up into that technology going that far. Is there any way to stop it?
Well, I mean, it'll take a culture shift for something like that to actually be stopped. And I actually think that there's a possibility that could happen, which is exciting. I just saw this report on Tucker Carlson where they did this test with a couple of cell phones. The SIM cards were removed. It wasn't even connected to the internet to see if it was still tracking where they go. And so they took it around Washington, D.C. And then the second that they turned it on, they were able to hook it up to a computer to see what it was sending data. It did record the data where they actually had visited. So Facebook and Google and all these, these big, huge corporations that are literally shaping our culture, they're collecting this data and using it for advertising purposes and stuff like that. But it would be really easy, to sell that information to the government or do any kind of number of horrible things with it. And, of course, as we've seen, especially lately, our government should not be trusted, with any kind of privacy or anything like that. So it's scary times. And, part of it, too, is that it's so complicated, how this technology actually works and what it does and where it's headed in the future. I think that probably most Americans think that we're still about 20 years behind what we actually are. Right, I mean, I'm I'm relatively young, but I still can't get my head around all this. It's moving so fast. I'm just now starting to try to learn what blockchain is, and even that's outdated now. And so it's crazy, and it's almost impossible to keep up on. So yeah, I think people should have a level of awareness about the world that we live in.
This amount of data that's been accumulated from all sorts of sources, is it possible that when this so-called disclosure happens, let's just say that ETs exist for a second, that they would access that information and in some way use that to either trick us in some way, some kind of massive deception? I'm trying to make that connection with that data, because it doesn't seem like the government, being as inept as it is, they could be just dupes, given the technology to do it, but really they're accumulating for their alien masters.
Well, and I'll say I personally don't have any problem with the idea that ETs might exist in a theological sense. In a biblical framework, a case could be made that it's at least possible. Now, I don't think that that's what's visiting us or abducting us or anything, but I lay out a strong case for that in the book. So yeah, let's just say that aliens do exist. I would say that if a foreign intelligence has the capabilities to hack our systems and get information on us, it should be no problem for a technologically advanced species of alien, or even if what I think it is something more extra dimensional or spiritual. They would have even higher levels, of intelligence, and something like that would be, should be no problem for them. So, but yeah, I think that they, even more than Facebook and Google, have the capabilities to, hypothetically would have the capabilities to observe us and see what we do and gather information on us to use against us at some point in the future.
I was listening to you, Derek Gilbert, and Michael Heiser, and you're talking about the aliens as if that Christians, the Christians should get in front of it. I guess what you guys were discussing, because it seems like they're always kind of behind things. But people, the reason people are looking up at the skies is because they're looking for answers. And, many times that answer is not coming from the religious establishment. And that's really one thing I like about you and Skywatch TV and Gen 6 conference, and all this, is it seems like it's elevating our conversation to a more intelligent way, taking archaeology, taking science, taking history, taking the biblical context, and coming up with more relevant, pertinent, and modern views, but still not saying, you guys aren't, going out in the forest and hugging trees and whatever, rubbing some rock crystals together. You're not doing that, because and people will have that fear. You're going off the deep end, you're going into way out. But you know what? We need to kind of go way out, because the message has been going round and round in the world and the technology, and what's going on in the skies is coming up quick, and it is happening.
Yeah, unfortunately, people really, but especially Christians, kind of have this idea that if you follow something to its extreme conclusion, then the thing that you start with is equal to that extreme conclusion. So, if I'm sure there's probably a lot of Christians watching that are uncomfortable with the idea that I just said, that extraterrestrials could be theologically possible. Now, I don't personally believe that, I don't believe that, but in a theological biblical framework, you could make a case, and I do so in the book. It's a fascinating discussion, and it's really interesting. But I remember when I was first confronted with that, I was uncomfortable, because I thought, you take it to the extreme conclusion, well, then that means that we have to believe that aliens are our creators, and we have to accept that evolution is real, and we have to accept all this. And you don't have to follow everything to its extreme conclusion. You think about it in politics, even on the right and the left. Just because you might be on the right doesn't mean you're alt-right. It doesn't mean you're so far right. And same with being on the left. If you're on the left, it doesn't mean you're Antifa. So you don't. We as Christians sometimes kind of have this idea of, well, stay away from that, because that will lead to New Age, or it'll lead to rubbing crystals together or whatever. And it doesn't have to. Some extremists will do that. But at that point, it's illogical. You just take it to the logical conclusion. And the logical conclusion is, and what we lay out in the book, is that, yes, while you could say that extraterrestrials are possible within a biblical framework, that's not the most probable source of the UFO phenomenon and the alien abduction phenomenon. That's likely something more spiritual, which actually the Bible does talk a lot about. But even without using the Bible, because we wanted to write something that would be accessible to atheists as well, like anybody, or New Agers or Buddhists or anybody who's interested in this topic. I mean, we're very upfront in the book and say that we hold a Christian worldview, and we do filter everything through that, just because everybody has their own bias. And anybody who says that they don't is a liar. Everybody has a bias. But what we try to do is just let the evidence go where it leads, and we follow that. We lead the reader along that path of logic that we took. And the basic conclusion is that, yes, there's very good reasons to believe that extraterrestrial life could be possible, and it very well might be, but it's very unlikely and illogical to suggest that is the cause of UFO phenomenon and alien abduction scenarios. But what's interesting is that a lot of the leaders in Washington, surprisingly but not really surprisingly, do believe that these are extra dimensional, not even extraterrestrial, but extra dimensional entities. They call them ETIs, extraterrestrial intelligences. Right. Even though they use the ET, they don't really mean ET. And we get this from the Podesta WikiLeaks, and right. I published a whole bunch of those in this book, and I went through a deep analysis of all of them. But basically, there's a lot of higher ups in Washington that believe that these extra dimensional entities, or these ETIs, extraterrestrial intelligences, they're from other universes, and we should follow them because they're, quote, obedient to God. They actually say that, and most of these people are, actually all of them that I came across in these emails are Catholic. So they're when they say God, they're talking about God from the Catholic perspective. But clearly, even that is false. But that's what these entities are saying to, like, channelers like Terry Mansfield, who worked closely with Edgar Mitchell, who possibly met, but at least had a lot of correspondence with John Podesta. And the reason that all of that is, like, so important is if and when official disclosure ever does actually happen, if there's ever a point where the government admits, well, okay, there is some weird stuff going on, we kept some stuff secret, here's what we know. We're not just going to get facts. We're going to get interpretations of facts. And it's going to be people like John Podesta and Tom DeLonge, the singer of Blink-182. He's big into this official disclosure. It's going to be people like that who's going to filter the information to the rest of us. So it's a good idea for us now to understand what their worldview is, so we can get ahead of it, like you said. And we as Christians should get ahead of this, because for too long, we've been ignoring this, the whole church.
Well, yeah, getting ahead of it is where we got to go, because if you take an atheist point of view, their worldview is sort of like liberalism. They're to the point now, as our Bear report said, that in California, if you give somebody a straw that they didn't ask for, you're going to get fined $1,000. Things are getting utterly ridiculous in these types of things, and so the disclosure people, that side, they're not going to come out with logical conclusions, and they're not going to give anybody solace or give them some peace of mind. They're just going to have a confused message. They don't know what they're talking about. There's various factions in there, but I would think that there's, in our side, I guess you would say, there's one God, one Spirit, one Christ, and so we have one message. And so that message shouldn't vary. It should include this type of information in it based on the biblical worldview, and as I said earlier, with the evidence that's dug up, man. You're talking about elongated skulls and ancient histories and pre-flood technology. These things are out there, and it's almost like it's and I like the fact, really, there's more discovery, it seems, coming from you guys than I've seen in the standard archaeologists, in ancient archaeological shows. They don't explain what the big heads on Easter Island is all about. They don't know. They tell me, okay, well, they used every tree on the island, and they cut it down, and they moved these. They don't know that. How do we know they weren't making cast of giants that were actually walking around? They were that tall.
Yeah, that's true. And it's strange. It's like it's almost part of the human condition that we feel. We feel almost like we have to follow a narrative, no matter what group we belong to, or what information we're being given. That's why there's there is a such thing as objective truth, but most people haven't taken the time to train themselves on how to identify objective truth from subjective interpretations. And there's a big difference, and it's an important difference. And that's why, like in archaeology, you could dig up a bone and the bone exists. It is from this species, from this, time. But even that, how are we interpreting it? Like, how do we know that it's from that time period? Is it because we've been taught from other research and history that it has to be, that young or that old, or is it because there's some objective data around it? And a lot of times we kind of fall into these subjective interpretations of things, and we as Christians do this too. I've actually been doing a series of videos on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JoshPeckDisclosure, and a big part of it is to try to get Christians to understand the difference between the objective truths of Christ, and he was obviously he existed. I mean, there's no credible historian that would deny that he at least existed. So then you follow that out logically. Well, was he who he said he was? Was he the Son of God? Was he a lunatic? And then that's where good apologetic work like that of Lee Strobel comes up and is really helpful in that. That's really important to understand, because that's how we're going to reach New Agers and atheists. And, whereas the more subjective interpretations, that works fine for us when we're having conversations within our own groups, because we don't have to necessarily prove anything to one another. But when we're actually trying to get at the heart of something that we might have a disagreement about, or we might have a difference in opinion, we should be able to back up why we believe the things that we believe based in objectivity. So it's really important. And I mean, that goes in really anything in life, in any field of work and in any religion, should operate that way. It's just unfortunate that most people don't really take the time to understand their own bias and to get comfortable with it, and then to learn what areas that they can personally grow in, and what areas aren't as good for them. And Jesus helps in that all throughout your life. That's part of what having a good relationship with Jesus is all about, is just like if you have kids, when you bring up your son or daughter and you raise your son or daughter, you have that same kind of relationship with them. You teach them the ways that they need to improve, and then you reward the things that they're doing good. It's the same kind of deal. So I think that if we as Christians really could embrace that, then questions like, could aliens exist, or that wouldn't be so vitriolic, and it wouldn't be so frightening, and it wouldn't be looked at as a threat to our faith, because it's really not at all. Whatever it turns out to be, it's not a threat. If we really believe that we have the truth and we really believe in the gospel, then nothing that comes up should be a threat to that. And so I think that we could all get along a lot better if we put that first.
Josh, a few years ago, I was doing a show on UFOs, and my cell phone, which is sitting right here. You do the multiverse and I do the multitasking, man. I got computers and tablets and phones. I get surrounded by this thing, man. I probably got 5G brain waves coming through. But anyway, so my phone started ringing. I'm thinking, look at it, it's one of my sons. I said, well, I'm doing this show, man. Don't be ringing me up in the middle of the show. I mean, this is kind of tacky, Well, why not? So I picked up the phone and answered. He said, hey, just north of town, there is a swarm of UFOs. And I was like,
I was the guest.
No way. Was that you?
Yeah, that was me. We were
my media manager's over here saying, yeah. I'm not saying. So yeah, I grabbed that video. I was trying to grab that video for the show so we could replay it. Man, this is almost like old time. I'm getting chills. But so I wanted to play that video, but that was happening during the show. And now somebody's going to have an explanation as to what that was.
And it was really weird, too. And I actually got it up on my YouTube channel. And thank you again for giving me permission to do that. If people want to do that, they can go to youtube.com/JoshPeckDisclosure. Just type in UFO swarm and it'll come right up. And the whole story behind that, because it was really weird timing. At the time that happened, you and I were talking about the big MUFON cover up. That MUFON actually has at their disposal a way to stop alien abductions, but they won't tell anybody. And it's to stop it in the name of Jesus Christ. Joe Jordan found that out, and he went to different people in MUFON. Nobody wanted anything to do with it, but he spent his whole ministry, really, and his whole work at MUFON delivering people from alien abductions. And what it takes is you use the name of Jesus to get rid of it. You start a relationship with Jesus. You actually have you get saved, basically. You convert to Christianity, you get saved, and then those things they don't have any authority over the name of Christ. So when they come to bother, you use the name of Christ, and then they got to leave. While we were talking about that, this big MUFON cover up, that was when it was your son or your nephew?
Yeah, my son. Yeah.
Yeah, your son. When your son sent the video, and it was just impeccable timing. It was so weird. It was such weird timing. So,
wow.
As Derek Gilbert likes to say, if I was a coincidence theorist, I might want to think it's a coincidence, but I don't know. It was pretty weird timing.
Yeah. Okay. I'll tell you what. So we got here. Let me get a question. I got questions been coming in for you. Here's one. It says the Bible states that the Earth will stop spinning for 3 days, and when that happens, isn't it true there will be winds over 1,000 miles an hour, causing massive tidal waves and buildings and everything tore off the terrestrial?
Did they give a Bible verse? I'm not familiar with it.
No, I am not familiar with that either. Somebody got a Bible verse on that the Earth stopped spinning for 3 days. Let us know on that one there. Another question comes in, says this is unrelated to tonight's topic, but
that's fine.
Why not? What's your thoughts on the Mandela effect?
Oh, actually, that's a cool topic. So Christina and I, we host a show called Into the Multiverse, and we recorded 3 episodes on that. So people look up Multiverse Peck Mandela effect, it'll come up.
Okay.
I personally, and because it goes back to empirical evidence, and it goes back to objectivity. What the Mandela effect is, it's a weird thing that happens, but we all interpret it differently. So for me, Occam's razor kind of comes into play. Is it more realistic, or is it more believable that I'll be a little facetious with it, but that there's some time traveling demon that goes back in time, changes the Bible, and now we can't believe our Bibles anymore, and we can't even know who the name of the Savior is, because if lion was changed to lamb or goat or wolf or whatever, how could they have changed the name of Jesus? And then that means that I have to now rely on my own faulty human memory to tell me what the Word of God says. I don't believe that for a second. I think that it is a weird phenomenon, and I think that it's probably, something biological and neurological, and there have been some pretty cool reports and studies done on that. It kind of goes along with like deja vu and stuff, and it's really interesting. But I don't think that it's and because I'm a big quantum physics guy. The question came up, well, couldn't it be like dimensions colliding and stuff like this? Or like time travel. We got into all of that in those 3 episodes. And even in the wildest of speculations, just under current physical laws, it would not work that way. It wouldn't work that way. It would play out a lot differently if dimensions were colliding or if time travel was occurring. So for a full explanation, people can look at that. But my own just real short answer on it is I don't believe that it's anything necessarily mysterious or spiritual. I think that it's a weird brain phenomenon that we all have from time to time, and it's interesting, but I don't think it's anything that we need to be afraid of or think that we're from other dimensions or something.
Yeah, I will put it in an interesting category. I don't mind having people on the show talking about it either, and I would definitely this show's always provided a forum for all points of view. And
yes.
And I get credits for allowing people to say what they have to say, and I get slammed for letting people say what they have to say. So
no, I do too. I share in that with you because like with the alien question, I'll have Gary Bates on and I'll have Michael Heiser on. They have two very different views of what's going on, and so either way, I get people that get upset about that. It's like, well, why? And it's because I don't want to pick just one. I'll pick one view for myself, but I don't want to tell people what to think. I want to give them the evidence. If somebody actually provided a strong case of why the Mandela effect is true and real, and there was some kind of empirical evidence with it, I would love to have that person on and interview them about it. I would love that. I just haven't come across it. So yeah, I'm totally open to new ideas too, and I'm glad that you are. And that's part of the reason I love your show so much.
And I've got a question for you. Why is it? This is about the octopus. Okay, in the movie Prometheus, the big creature at the end is an octopus. In the movie Arrival is an octopus. There's something going on with that. I think there might even be is it Cthulhu? Is that an octopus? I don't know if that's an octopus or not. Something I need to see. But what is it with the octopus and aliens, man? What's that connection?
You know what I think it is? Derek Gilbert's actually done a lot more research into this area than I have. He wrote a whole chapter on it. My personal view of it, he'd be able to give a lot more of the details, but a lot of it is cultural. It goes back to H.P. Lovecraft and his Cthulhu stories, which are phenomenal and weird and amazing, and they're really, really interesting. But I think that it kind of harkens back to this old idea of this ancient beast of chaos, and it was called, it was a sea monster of chaos, because back then everybody they had basically the same kind of questions we have today. If there's a God, why do bad things happen? And why, if there's a loving God that created everything, why is everything so messed up? Why are there natural disasters? And all that kind of stuff. And so part of the explanation for this was the sea monster beast thing. And, it was a spiritual being, and different areas in the Near East had different names for it. But in the Bible, it's called Leviathan. Mm-hmm. And actually in the Bible, it shows up in prophecy, too, which is pretty cool. But so the idea is it's because of this chaos force kind of thing got personified into this beast. Mm-hmm. Now, we have, as part of the chaos of our modern culture, we've got this whole alien thing that nobody can give any kind of real answer to. Nobody, if they decide to come and take you at night, they can just do it and you don't have any defense. They can come into your room. It's really chaotic and you have no control. So that's what chaos is. It's a lack of control. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why it gets connected in that way with the chaos stuff. I think it's an ancient old question, and it's an ancient old fear, and it's been personified in different ways throughout culture. But I think that's why it connects so well with the alien stuff. Because if you think, what is the most just out there real? I mean, because there's like ghosts and stuff too, but it's not as real and tangible as like the idea of an alien would be. Mm-hmm. Because an alien is supposed to be physical. That's what the culture dictates. But I think that's why it connects so well with this idea of chaos and this octopus or this sea beast or this sea dragon or whatever. Mm-hmm. It is because just like the alien phenomenon back then, the chaotic stuff was real. They could actually physically, tangibly see tornadoes and hurricanes and floods and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of why it probably got meshed in with that just culture, which is really interesting how we, as humans, can kind of make those connections.
Hey, what about this? What's this intel I'm picking up, man? You heading out to L.A. to be interviewed on In Search Of. What is going on, man? Can I have your autograph or what?
Absolutely. Hey, this is cool. So this will be the first time that I've actually publicly announced it. I wrote a little something about it on Facebook, but this is the first time that I've actually talked about it. So the History Channel got a hold of me a couple of months ago, and they told me that they were rebooting the show In Search Of, which used to be hosted by Leonard Nimoy, and now it's being hosted by Zachary Quinto, which is like the new Spock of the new Star Trek movies. And they want to do an episode on CERN and time tunnels and time travel and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They came across me and Tom Horn's book, Abbott on Ascending, and I guess it interested them. So I talked on the phone with one of the producers, super nice guy, really intelligent. Like he when I was trying to tell him about like all this stuff, he already knew it, which was really cool. And I'm thinking, well, why don't they just have you on the show? So they offered to fly me out to LA to do an interview for the show, and of course I happily agreed. So I'm really excited about that. So keep me in prayer, everybody. In like a week, I think, on the 15th or the 14th, somewhere around there, I'm flying out to LA, and I'm going to do that for a couple days, and then I'll be back. But I'm really excited about it. Super cool stuff.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm so proud of you, man. All right, here we got another question. It says, do you celebrate Good Friday? You know where that's going?
I mean, I recognize it for its significance. I don't do the ash on the forehead, or I don't really do any of that kind of stuff. I'm not Catholic, but I don't really have an issue with people who do. I don't think it's that big of a deal or that big of a problem. But basically, my wife and I will tell our kids the story of Jesus' resurrection and all that stuff. I have a blog. Excuse me, a blog article that I wrote a few years ago that every Easter I'll reshare about the chronology of the resurrection and how the Gospels seem to, on certain details, they seem to disagree, which isn't really a problem. I mean, they're coming from different people, but some Christians are like, well, if it's the inspired word, it should all line up perfectly, and so I make the case, well, it actually can, as long as you don't put tradition first. If you don't put tradition first and you take the text first, it actually fits together fine. It fits together perfectly. So I'll be sharing that again. I do every year. I'll probably put it in the Skywatch magazine this time around. So yeah, that's basically what we do. Everybody's kind of got their own traditions and their own things that they do. I don't have any personal problem against any of them, but as long as people know what it's all about, I think that's great.
All right. I showed a video of the opening of the Olympics, and I don't know if you saw that. But this object, did you see the winner? Did you see that? All right. Well, what happens is, man, difficult to describe, but something comes up out of the ground, and it has sexual connotations to it, man. I mean, it's people mocking that thing coming out of there, and then it lights something on top. So that being the case, I'm segueing right into something called panspermia, man. Is it possible? What would be the explanation that is happening? Tell us what that is, and is that possible that could have happened?
Are you talking about directed panspermia?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the basic idea is, Ancient Aliens and shows like that will promote this idea a lot. What directed panspermia? There's two different panspermia theories. The first one is just panspermia, which says that maybe an asteroid a long time ago carrying some microbe accidentally crashed into the Earth and started life. Now, directed panspermia is the same idea, but instead of it being accidentally, it was aliens that did it. So, alien, kind of like a Prometheus, which we talked about earlier, beginning of Prometheus. That would be a directed panspermia moment where, the aliens find a planet and they seed life there. Right. I don't think that's possible at all within a biblical framework, and I don't even think evolutionary. There's no real evidence to support it scientifically, which is surprising that people like Richard Dawkins will go there. He won't go to the God stuff because that's too out there and there's no scientific evidence. But then he'll go to directed panspermia, which again has no scientific evidence to it. It's part of the reason that this whole UFO thing has become a religion in a lot of ways. And me and Derek write about that in the book. But yeah, I mean, with something that's that subjective and that there's just no real evidence, then it just comes down to, well, what do you want to believe?
Okay. So Josh, are you saying there's about as much evidence for panspermia as there is for Trump colluding with the Russians? That much? Is it that much?
Yeah, I'd say that's about the right amount. 0.
Okay. Hey, I want to ask you, because the title of your book is "The Day the Earth Stands Still." Okay. Now, describe for me the world. Let's just say, and whether you agree with it or not, I'm not quite sure, but let's just say something does come down, and you mentioned the mall. I heard that on a conversation with you guys. It lands like the day the Earth stands, the day the Earth stood still. Don't want to confuse the two. What happens to civilization? People at work, okay, they're going by, and all of a sudden, news report comes flashing, Fox News, CNN, all of them, interrupted radio. What happened? What happens at that moment?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, and that's a possibility that we get into in the book, because it's an important question. What happens if aliens actually did present themselves, and then life forever is different? And I think that we're living in a time where it would be a shock for sure, and there would probably be, riots. There would be things that you would expect, but I don't think that it would be as intense as people might think on the surface of just surface level thinking about it. When you really dig into it, if that happened, who in the culture is really going to be surprised? Who's going to be really that surprised about it? Certainly nobody in any other religious, because they'll see it like the the Eastern Indians will just see it as, well, that's Krishna, or that's whatever they worship. They'll think of it, they'll interpret it that way. Everybody will have their interpretation. Us here over on the West, we would probably more think, well, that's an alien, or Christians will think, well, those are demons. And whether it's one or the other doesn't really matter. So it's all about the messaging. Now, them just showing up is one thing. That's already jarring enough. But I think that the culture has been set up in a way that it wouldn't be that big of a shock. And I mean, we've been inundated with alien stuff for decades now. I mean, certainly as long as I've been alive, and even well before that. There have been plenty of stuff in popular culture with that exact scenario, and that's actually why we called the book, "The Day the Earth Stands Still" instead of "Stood Still" like the movie, but because it's still a future thing possibly. But yeah, it would be a shock. But people would start to interpret it in their own way, and then they would have to wait to see what these things said, if anything. And it could be like in Arrival, where they don't say anything for a long time. And people just got to get used to that there's ships in the sky now, and it takes a while to establish communication and all that, giving people a chance to get used to it. Well, by then, people are already going to be sharing ideas and talking about it, and a cultural type of interpretation of it will already start to form. So that's the prime time for some authority to come in and interpret it for everybody else, because they'll be susceptible to it. Yeah. So, at that point, it's who has something to gain from it, and how much power do these things actually have to control the messaging, and then what is the messaging? If the messaging is something like, we want to bring you free energy or whatever, then obviously it's, well, where is it? Let's have it. Great. I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be, if that scenario plays out, it would be something more like, for one thing, I don't think they're gonna present themselves as extraterrestrials. I think they would present themselves as extra-dimensional beings, and that they would say that we are actually the old gods that all of you worshipped, but we're outside of space and time in a way, but we're still physical and real. We're extra-dimensional. You understand that with quantum physics now, and that's why we decided now is the time to come down and help you through your development in this pivotal time in human development, or whatever. But I think it would be along those lines if they decide to do that. But on the other hand, and this is what makes me think that they might not take that tactic. They might not, because right now, if the goal is to deceive people, they're doing that now without showing up to everybody all the time. They're already doing that really successfully. I mean, the show Ancient Aliens is on its 12th season now. I mean, it's a really popular message, and people are eating it up, because most people have a spiritual hole in themselves that needs to be filled with something, because they've already rejected God, and they don't want anything to do with Christianity.
Is Giorgio still doing that?
I think so. I haven't watched it in a while.
Yeah, I wonder if he's still got that little pin going on now. I figure he's got the hair. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Well, that's whatever. Okay, well, let's go a little bit further. Okay, because like in War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, it seemed like everybody headed to the highway. I mean, this is what I'm seeing. I mean, if they say the aliens have landed, I got a feeling that the people in inner city will see their time to riot and pillage like they normally do. Then the other people trying to get out of the city for whatever reason. I mean, you think it's happening. Well, if they're landing in Washington D.C., they're probably coming to Indianapolis too, or to Crane. I mean, they're coming. They're everywhere. They're that's probably the mothership. That's the first. The scouts. And so there'll probably be people running, say to the church houses and such. There'll be, of course, other people be cutting heads off over there. So I mean. It'd be 24 hours a day of this. There will be no other news except that. People will be in fear. I imagine that people will commit suicide. But what about people that are, say, looking for answers? Where would they go to get the answers? Because they're not going to get it from the mainstream media.
Yeah, and most of those people, and this is not to turn this into a political thing, but it just kind of is. Most of those people who are looking for answers are on the left. You don't see a whole lot of those on the right, because a lot of people on the right, either they're really, really secure in their own atheism, if they're on the right, because you have to be. If you're a right-wing atheist, you got to be really secure in what you believe politically. But there's that. But most right-wingers are Christian, or at least have some kind of understanding of it. So most of the people that are looking for answers would be on the left. So you would have right-wingers like you and me, who would be loading up our guns, and we're waiting for everything to come down. And but then you would have the more leftist people who are like, no, we got to have peace and love and understanding, and let's bring them in. Let's bring them into California and all these places. So, I mean, it would basically be like a new immigration crisis. I mean, politically, it would be something like that.
Yeah, right. Democrats will be looking for votes.
Yep.
Okay, so that's going to happen. And nasty Pelosi, she's going to be out there. She's going to be trying to get some votes. I mean, that's just the way they roll. You just know they politicize everything. Yeah. So that's what's going to happen. Okay, but I'm still seeing people heading to the hills, man. They're thinking, this is they're thinking this is the big one, man. This is what they said was coming forever, and now we got to hightail it out of town. But so I mean, is that too far from an episode of what could happen?
No, I don't think so. If stuff starts showing up, I'm going to be heading for the hills. Like, I don't care if it's a demon or an ET or what it is. I'm going to be heading for the hills. But so I don't think that's too far off at all. Yeah, I mean, it'll be panic, and it'll be widespread panic and everything. But I don't think it'll be to the point where everybody is rioting. I think each group, that we have within humanity will handle it differently. Some people will riot, but I don't think everybody will. Some people are going to think that the saviors are here. Some people are going to think that. There are even some Christians that are going to think, well, I guess this is the return of Christ. There are some Christians that would think that because they don't understand their own prophetic theology and eschatology and stuff like that. So life would just be totally different after something like that. So
there ain't no going back. There will be no going back. So people's worldview will change, and it depends on how solid of a foundation they have, whether or not to get washed away. I mean, a bunch of people, especially the Californicators. Have you ever seen that movie in Independence Day? Where these freaks went up on top of a building, man, and they were saying, "Take me, take me." Well, half of Californicate, they're gonna be saying that. But I would get back.
Leftists.
Well, man, they're gonna a bunch of they're freak show out there, so they're gonna be first to sign up for abduction and whatnot. And they probably enjoy some of those hideous experiments that's going to happen to them. All right, hey, from our YouTube chat going on, we have this question: how far will humans go before we are what we worship?
That's an interesting question too. Yeah, I don't know. I think that we still have a lot of room that we could really mess some stuff up and get really, really advanced technologically. I think that if you took a snapshot of the world today and gave it to somebody 50 years ago, they would think, oh, well, that must be the tribulation. Like, there's no way that that's even possible in a Christ's return world. So because every generation has kind of thought that, we tend to think that we're right on the brink, and I think that too. We're right on the brink before this just all topples down, and I think that too. But I also know that we're in a long a long tradition of every generation before us believing that. So likely, we probably can get a lot more technological than we are now, which is scary. It's a little exciting, but because it'd be kind of cool to see what we can come up with. But it's also frightening because the more powerful things that we come up with, the more potential those things can be used against us. Like Google and Facebooks are using our own phones against us now. So yeah, it's an interesting question.
Well, Josh, is this new upcoming 5G network really the alien brainwash channel?
No, I actually, here, I'll say this first. I know very little, next to nothing about it, so I'm so not the authority on it. There are probably people who listen to your show probably already know more about it than I do. Now I do have like close colleagues and friends that have concerns over it, and I share in some of those concerns as well. But I don't know enough about it. But I also kind of know sometimes. On things that we should worry about, we don't worry enough. And then things that we don't really need to worry about, we worry too much. So I don't know if it's one of those situations. Regardless, we should be as informed as we can. And, I'm always preaching that. And this is the time where, unfortunately, I'm just not as informed as I should be. I got to do more research on that before I can answer intelligibly about it.
All right. Well, hey, we're right near the top of the hour where we take a 5-minute break. Josh, how can the people get a hold of that book?
They can go to officialdisclosure.com is the best place to go, right? If they go and get the book there, for $39.99, they can get the book plus a whole bunch of unreleased, never going to be released ever again, interviews from people like the late Chris Putnam, L.A. Marzulli, Dr. Michael Heiser, Joe Jordan. The list goes on and on. There's 12 or 13 of these guys and these exclusive behind-the-scenes interviews that'll never be released. They can get that. They can get a couple of Dr. Michael Heiser's book. They can get my new book, Unraveling the Multiverse, the Official Disclosure audio series. There's about $400 worth of free materials that people will be able to have if they order the book from officialdisclosure.com. So people should go there and check it out.
All right. Hey, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Josh, mute your mic, take a break, and we'll be back with you in 5 minutes.
Sounds good.
All right, everybody. You're watching and or listening to the Edge Television broadcast. Tonight, our Newsmaker line is Josh Peck. We'll be back with him. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll be right back.
Three very mysterious, shiny lights have police and residents puzzled.
This pilot who flew Barack Obama says UFOs are real and he's seen one firsthand.
The triangular-shaped flashing object appears to be floating above the capital city.
So this large disc,
oh yeah,
massive, it was following you.
It was pacing us. Here's this giant red ball just above the clouds.
Unbelievable.
Oh, it was.
Four different species, at least, had been visiting this planet for thousands of years.
For the first time in history, the disturbing truth behind the push for official disclosure of extraterrestrial intelligence and UFOs has been uncovered. For years, religious and secular researchers have tried to determine how the world would react to a genuine extraterrestrial reality. But what if their conclusions are wrong? Humankind has defined them as devilish creatures. Yet something even more diabolical is occurring. What if there's a difference between ancient demonic phenomena and the question of extraterrestrial life? It was hinted at in the WikiLeaks.
People really want to know what the government knows.
I have said I want to open the files as much as we can.
A reality that lurks in the shadows that will soon come to light. A truth so shocking, it threatens the destiny of every soul on planet Earth. You must ask yourself, why now suddenly is seeking to answer the question of UFOs life-threatening?
This is another investigator who is getting very close to information on official disclosure that's now been found dead.
I've talked to a lot of pilots here, and they've all admitted that they've seen UFOs, but they kind of keep quiet about it.
The government discounts every single report that ever seems to come out, every UFO report.
I'm about the only person willing to get in front of the camera and talk about the UFOs that were flying overhead.
Promises of earth-shattering news are being quietly whispered by scientists and government insiders. Is something about to happen that was prophesied in the Holy Bible? This November, internationally acclaimed best-selling authors Josh Peck and Derek P. Gilbert peel back the lid on an astonishing cover-up and expose on a most insidious deception. In the day the Earth stands still, unmasking the old gods behind ETs, UFOs, and the official disclosure movement.
And welcome back to the Edge Television broadcast. My name is Daniel Lott. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and follow me on Facebook as well, where many times I put my ranting points exclusively. You also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to drop by Josh's websites there. We have links in the bio section of the Edge website. We'll put the high definition video up in our YouTube channel as well, and then we'll put the audio extract into our TuneIn Radio station there, where it plays our programming 24 hours a day, and that TuneIn Radio plays across any device, any platform. That's TuneIn Radio, where our station is. All right, let's go back to our Newsmaker line and bring back on the Skype Live Josh Peck. Josh, welcome back. Can you hear me now? Hang on.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that.
Hey,
forgot I was on mute.
Man, hey, I tell you what, though, I got some more things here I want to talk about. These aliens coming down, are you going to open up a baptisma?
I will open up a Bible and rebuke them in the name of Jesus. That's what I will do.
You know, and I've asked on this question, how come you can't get rid of alien abductions or any other alien or demonic activity with the name of Muhammad? I'm not sure that has the kind of effect, because I guess if you use that term, then all of a sudden the demons are saying, hey, what's up?
Yeah. If anything, it makes it worse. And isn't that interesting too, that there have been people of different religions who have tried to stop this with the practices that their religions provide. So like New Agers, when they get attacked, they'll try, salt or crystals or things like that. And I remember that because I used to be a New Ager, not anymore, thank God, but I used to be, and all that stuff is so ineffective. And but yeah, you never hear of somebody stopping it in the name of Buddha or Muhammad or anything else. It's only Jesus Christ, and that should tell us something.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what's going on there. Well, I mean, those are kind of questions that people are going to ask. And I think it was brought up in that interview I heard again was about do they have to be baptized? Do we have to go to other worlds? Did Jesus die for them? Who created them? If they do exist, and I think, are you coming from a place of if?
We get into all that in the book because those are really good theological questions that people have actually been having for hundreds of years. It's actually a pretty old question. And it used to be, it wasn't even that long ago where Christianity wasn't so hostile towards the idea of life on other worlds. It was actually Thomas Paine, who was really hostile towards Christianity, who was first bringing up these questions. Well, wouldn't that mean that Jesus would just have to die on every planet? And no. Why would it mean that? The Bible, the gospel itself is the story of love and redemption and salvation of humanity. It excludes everything else. So that doesn't mean it would be a different set of rules for something else. Like, for example, it always comes back to this thing. What is the image of God? Because when I bring up the example of there's no salvation plan for animals, but we know animals exist in the kingdom because it says so. After the reign of Christ and 1,000-year reign, there's still animals there. So somehow they made it, but it doesn't say how. You don't have to go evangelize your cat. Your cat's fine. It's outside of that covenant with Jesus. So we should assume that aliens would be the same. But then people will say, but they're, if aliens are real, then they're intelligent. And,
right.
Isn't that the image of God? No, it's not. The image of God is actually a status that he bestows on only a certain portion of his creation, which is humanity. It's a status. It's to say that we are to be God's imagers, in a sense. We're to be God's representatives here on earth, and we're supposed to treat the earth and each other as if God was here in the flesh. And this is actually why it's like such a it's such a big sin to murder somebody else, because when you kill somebody else, what you're doing is you're effectively killing God in effigy. Because we're created in the image of God. So if there are ET, if there's some alien civilization out there, who knows, what their salvation plan is? It wouldn't have to have anything to do with Jesus. Jesus is our Savior. He's humanity's Savior. It wouldn't have to have anything to do with that. But that also means that they're not more morally superior. And here's where the Catholics who believe in ET, this is where they get it wrong. Because they think, well, they're outside of sin then. Well, there's no reason to believe that. So they must be morally superior. Again, no reason to believe that. They could still be very much in sin. We don't have the definitions for that because God didn't tell us in the Bible. And that doesn't mean that it's not real. There's lots of things God didn't tell us about in the Bible. He didn't tell us about most of the universe. He didn't tell us about toilet paper or that cars would be invented someday. Or, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we weren't told about, dinosaurs and a whole bunch of stuff. And yet, so some people will bring up that argument, well, the Bible doesn't say that aliens are real, so they must not be real. And I'm not trying to make the case for aliens because, again, I personally don't believe that there are extraterrestrials out there, but I'm not bothered by the idea that there could be. And if it turns out that we discover life somewhere, like if we discovered there was life on Mars or something, there is nothing that would shake my faith in that. Even if it was super intelligent life, even if it was life that had greater technology than we have, it wouldn't shake my faith at all. Because it still fits in with the gospel, because it's outside of it. It's not even a part of it. Okay. It's not addressed by the gospel. So the gospel still applies to us as humans. Okay. So it all comes back to that image of God thing.
Okay, we have a question from our YouTube chat from Penelope Wade. Asked the question: could this be tied in with a false rapture?
It could be, and that's a good question too, because actually the New Agers have already put provisions for this since years and years and years ago, because they'll say, some of them, you can't ever put all New Agers in any one group because none of them believe in the same stuff. But some New Agers believe that when the aliens come back, they're going to abduct the Christians, basically abduct some people, and we're either destroyed because we're not going to go along with this spiritual enlightenment kind of thing. We're either destroyed or we're taken somewhere off world where we can be, processed and made better in a different way than the rest of the more accepting world. And then they'll say that's the Christian's rapture. So when that happens, when you see a bunch of people disappear off the earth, that's what it is. It's not Jesus, it's aliens. Mm-hmm. So they've already made provisions for that. So I can see if And I'm still kind of split on the whole rapture thing. I mean, I've got my view, but I accept other people's views, even if they're different from my own. It's a mysterious topic, but anyway, however that plays out, if there is a day where millions of people vanish or whatever, if we're all of a sudden in a Tim LaHaye book or something, then there are absolutely going to be people that would say, well, it's not Jesus, it's aliens. We've had alien abductions forever, and now they've just decided to take a lot more. Or they might say it's like some dimensional thing, like in that show, The Leftovers. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they kind of dealt with that. Like, what if a rapture event happened, but it didn't have anything to do with religion? So yeah, I mean, it could be tied in with a false idea of a rapture or a real idea of a rapture, or, it all comes back to interpretation.
Okay. All right, we have this question for you. Again, this from our YouTube chat. It says, when God created man in our image, who's the our?
He was speaking to an audience of angels. Now, it's kind of like when, if I tell my kids, okay, we're going to build a fence. Now, I know my kids are not going to build a fence. I'm going to be building the fence. But I'm including them in that because they're part of the family and I love them, So I'll say, let's build a fence. We're going to go outside. But really what it is they're going to watch me build a fence. But it's still an inclusive family action, even though they're not doing the exact same things that I am. So the language, especially when you look back into the original Hebrew and stuff, the language seems to indicate, and a lot of this is drawn from Dr. Michael Heiser's work, and I hope that I'm portraying it accurately. But the language seems to convey this idea that he was speaking to the angels, but that doesn't mean that the angels had a part in the creation process themselves. God was still doing the creating, but it was, let's create God in our image, All right, kids, let's go build a fence. This will be fun. So that from my current understanding, that's the idea that it kind of seems to convey.
Okay. That's a good answer. All right. Another one back from the YouTube. God created us in that image. What does that mean for our problems and our potential?
Well, I think, we're just human. I mean, we have problems as human because we're a fallen species. We're a fallen creation. So we have problems there, but our potential can really be just whatever we want that's in line with God's will and whatever he allows, basically. Like my kids, again, having kids has really kind of helped me understand the whole God the Father and us, as his creation kind of dynamic. But, having kids, they're like, my child has the potential to be a drug dealer. I don't want that for him, and I'm going to do everything I can to stop him, but he still has free will if he decided to go along. But what I want to do is I want to raise him to be, like a good person and, a good member of society that's contributing to, society and making life better. That's what I want for him. That's what I'm going to try to get him to do. So we have that potential that God has already bestowed upon us. We could be as great as we want to be, but it's God's idea of what's good. It's not our idea of what's good. Just like my kids' idea of what's good is let's jump on the bed until we break our legs somehow. That's their idea of fun. That's not my idea of good at all. It's no, you're not going to jump on the bed. You can go outside and run around. Do that. And they get to have fun either way. So I think it's just kind of like a bigger, version of that example. I actually think that's why God gave us kids, was so that we have examples like that to kind of help us understand his relationship with us.
Okay. A question from the live chat off the website, MR2U2, was what was that thing at the SpaceX launch? Now, I'm not sure what they're talking about.
I'm not sure either. I haven't seen anything on that.
So is it true? We have a Tesla heading to Mars. Is that right?
I know there. I haven't. I unfortunately have been sick the past week, so I'm not really up on current events as well as I should be. But I know that there have been plans to go to Mars for a while. Yeah. And I think that Elon Musk has really been heading that because, why wait on the government when you can have a privatized, company deal with it? And it sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but I'm not. I'm like really being serious. If you want to go to Mars, go to Mars. Don't wait on the government to do it or it'll never happen.
Okay. What about this idea that aliens or these multi-dimensional beings feed on the energy from souls? Anything to that?
Yeah, there have been some weird abduction reports where some people who have been abducted and taken aboard a craft have gave reports that they've experienced what they describe, and this is multiple reports too, that they describe as their soul being sucked out of them and being put in this box. And it's like, sometimes it's called like a soul box. And to them, it's just utter agony and hell because they're not in their body anymore. They're just in this box and they can't do anything and they don't know what's happening, and it's really scary and dark. Now, I don't know. I don't know how much of that. There could be any number of reasons that these entities would do something like that. Maybe they actually do get some kind of energy from actually doing something like that. Or maybe there's a reason that they want to project that kind of hellish scenario on somebody. You know, maybe the fear is enough to, I don't know. There's so many different aspects of it and such little information that it's hard to really know for sure. But I would say it's at least a possibility.
Well, I know, getting back to sort of the political angle of that, Democrats always sucking the souls out of people. Hey, and speaking of Democrats, man, you know, during the break there, we played the Skywatch commercial for your book, The Day the Earth Stands Still. And in it, there was a clip from Hillary Clinton saying, I would like to get all the files. And I'm thinking, it's funny coming from you, man. I mean, I almost started busting out when I saw that. You know, she's going to bleach white him if she did get him out. But have you heard anything from Trump or even Obama going back about the releasing the files?
No, but I do believe that, and I wrote about this in the book, I do believe that we have the best chance of actually learning something in a Trump presidency, because this has been the most transparent presidency that we've maybe ever had. You know, I mean, it's not only is it already leaky enough, which is, I mean, I like that there's not so much focus put on secrecy with Trump and his administration. I really like that a lot. It's really transparent. You pretty much know what's going on. You know, when he had his doctor go out there and tell everybody that he's in good health, he actually told the doctor, stay out there and answer all their questions, no matter how ridiculous it is. I want them to know everything. Just tell him everything. And he did. He was out there for like 45 minutes answering all these stupid questions about, now, are you sure that he's fit to run, you know, to be the president? And you know, he sniffs a lot. What does that mean? Just all these stupid questions. But yeah, so I think that if Hillary had become president, there would just be no hope. You know, it would be a dead done deal. She's not releasing anything unless it benefits her in some way, which it wouldn't. So just like in Obama, because John Podesta was in the Obama administration, and John Podesta even tweeted out that his biggest failure was that he wasn't able to convince Obama to release anything, you know, towards official disclosure or aliens or any of that stuff. Right. It was his biggest failure. So even like really left-wing John Podesta failed in those regards. I think that I don't know if Trump is even thinking about aliens or if he has any. I haven't heard anything about it. But if there was any chance, I mean, I think it would be within this administration as opposed to any other.
I mean, kind of go back to first hour. We know that if aliens come down, the Democrats want the votes because there obviously will be illegal aliens from outer space on our planet. And of course, the Republicans would probably say, hey, man, you vote for us, we'll give you a tax cut. The thing is, the joke's on them because I don't think they're going to pay any taxes, man. As far as I know,
if they even have an economy.
I know, as far as I know, they're always stealing all of our gold. That's what I heard. There's, you know, and they got a giant mothership over the ocean sucking the water out because they ain't got no water from their planet, you know. And they, of course, we ain't gonna talk about their sexual problems. They're nasty in that area. All right. So, what about this here? I was looking in your book. I haven't read to this chapter, but it says "Rise of the Mystical Scientism." Man, what is that?
Yeah, that kind of talks about how, you know, again, scientism and just science are two different things. Scientism is more of an interpretation on established facts. So, you know, I kind of liken this to quantum physics. Like, quantum physics is an established scientific pursuit, but unfortunately, it's been interpreted in really weird ways, a lot of times to support New Age theology. So if anybody's ever seen the so-called documentary, you know, the fictional fantasy, What the Bleep Do We Know? If anyone's ever seen that, then you get you know what I'm talking about. You get about 10% science, and then you get 90% New Age interpretations and all this stuff. And it's funny because they don't credit anybody until the very end. And throughout that whole movie, you're hearing from all, and you think that these guys are scientists or something. And at the very end, they finally credit everybody, and you find out who everybody is. They're like yoga instructors, and they're like New Age gurus. Like, they're not scientists. And you might get one or two scientists, but then they have some kind of weird New Age bent to them. And So yeah, like scientism, it's more of like a weird interpretation of what science is actually supposed to be. It's like the religion of science. Science itself should be objective. Now, again, we all have our own bias, and we should understand that, and we should be comfortable in that, but we need to recognize it. I certainly have my own bias. I'm absolutely a right-wing conservative. I'm a Christian. I've got a lot of bias, but at the same time, I'm going to be upfront so people know what they're getting. With a lot of science, you don't ever get that. You don't ever get whoever is trying to explain something to you. You don't get what their bias is. Now, if somebody's just explaining a math problem, then it doesn't matter because it's just math. But and that goes with a lot of science too. But if somebody is trying to tell you what something means, even calling the Higgs boson the God particle, that's totally like a scientism type of thing. That's totally an interpretive kind of thing. It has nothing to do with anything weird or spiritual. And it's not even what the media reported, that it's the particle that gives things mass. That's not even what it is. There's a whole story behind that, but I don't want to get too off track. But just basically, scientism is kind of this mystical way of looking at science that doesn't have to be rooted in objective fact or empirical evidence. It can just kind of be whatever you want it to be, but you still get to call it science.
So Josh, let's just say we have the landing there. We come in peace. We're at the mall there. Of course, you got vendors out there selling hot dogs too, trying to sell them hot dogs, trying to make it off. But anyway, okay, so let's just say they start walking up and start zapping people, or they don't really come in peace. Let's just say they zap the Capitol building, whatever, and we got to fight back. What would be in that view? What would be the best weapon that we could fight back with for these kind of entities / aliens?
Well, it depends. If they're biological, a gun. If they're just biological entities. Now, if there's something, if they are supposedly extra dimensional or whatever, then it would be the name and authority of Jesus Christ. Because if you go and preach the word at them and they run in fear, then you know that this is not an alien.
Would you say that the whole ship assembly and all the little demons and the reptilians and sectoids and all of them are just poof?
I don't know. Because it seems like when abduction scenarios happen and the name of Jesus is called, they just leave. They leave and everything's back to normal. So I would think so. But then at the same time, if they do have some type of physicality to them, if there's something biological, if there's something, or if they have some legal claim, some spiritually legal claim to be on the earth, and it does seem like that there will be a time for that because, Bible prophecy talks about that, where there will be a time where, like the locusts come out of the pit and we're going to have to deal with these things and they'll just be here. If that happens, it might not be enough. Now, you might be able to say, in the name of Jesus, I command you to leave. And if you're a Christian, you might be okay. Bible prophecy talks about that, like with the locust thing. They don't attack the Christians. They attack the unbelievers. So, it seems like for some people that could work. Now, if it's something that's just totally weird and out of left field, and maybe, if it is an actual alien or ET or something biological that doesn't have any real framework within the Bible, then yeah, I think that you're going to have a lot of liberals fleeing to conservative houses because they know that that's where it's going to be the safest because we have guns.
Well, yeah, the guns, and they also they might feel like, hey man, these guys are always talking about this Jesus person and God. Maybe they got some inroads, because they're all be going into their safe spaces and playing with Play-Doh and stuff. Those rooms, those are going to be packed, man. Those rooms, so they're going to bleed out. But no, man, I would think, it's almost like there's no atheist in a foxhole type situation. When it comes down to that, I think a lot of people who just want street creds for being liberal, crazy kooks, and I would say half of the movement is like that. They're probably normal people, but they want to be cool. They want to text them. They want to be noted. But somewhere deep down, I think that people know they are deluding themselves. They're conjuring up these ideas that don't make any sense. It's a fashion statement for a lot of them. With I was going to say the vagina hats, but whatever. That's going on. That, and
yeah.
But when it comes down to it, a lot of these people you figure have some root in here in the gospel somewhere in their deep dark past that they just denied. But when it comes down to aliens landing on the mall, man, I got a feeling a lot of them are going to turn back and say, well, I don't think my my little safe space is going to help me much. I need to go to a bigger power. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And you can even see this today because there is something in there. There's something in these people. There's something in, these radical leftists that knows that they are a creature that's supposed to be subject to some kind of authority. And here's how you know. Because most of them, I believe that a lot of reason that leftists are the way that they are is because they've never actually had to deal with anything real. They've been bubble wrapped their whole lives. They haven't had to deal with anything actually real. But here's the deal: when they're in a protest and then they start trying to get into a fight with a conservative, right. The second that the conservative punches back, which is happening more and more now, and good, it should. What do? The leftists will call police. They will call for the very thing that they're supposedly fighting against because they know that they're subject to some kind of authority and they know that they can't handle stuff their own. So the minute stuff starts to get real, they start calling out to another authority, and the one that's right there at the time is just the police. So they start calling for the police. Yeah. So if there is a time where something crazy like this happens, it's not going to be the police because they're going to be helpless in that situation. It's going to be God. And it's because that we are creatures from a creator. We're created from a higher power. We have a sense about us that knows that we're subject to some kind of authority. We all have that. So of course we would want to align that with the only true authority and the only good and holy authority.
Well, that type of scenario is kind of played out already in a different area where Baltimore is saying they're having record homicides, and they said third year in a row record homicides, and they fired the police chief. They blame it on the police chief. Why all these murders? What's going on? Well, maybe for 3 years, the mayor went against the police department and tried to string them up, and falsely accuse people, and just and the police just backed off, and so it's that kind of thing will go larger than that. Just a little city that go nationwide. Here's another question from our YouTube chat. It says, what do you think about the allegory of the cave?
Oh, I love it. Actually, for a really good analysis of that, people can look up Mark Flynn. He wrote a book called Forbidden Secrets of the Labyrinth, and he did an amazing analysis of the whole allegory of the cave, which is basically like, it's this idea that, say you were chained in a cave and that was your, from birth on, that was your only existence, and you knew nothing but darkness and nothing else. And then say that, a light from the entrance of the cave finally came in, finally the sun rose or something. And then you see the light on the wall and you wonder, well, what is that? And you start to see shadows even as things pass by. Now, your only experience is the shadows. Now, say that there are a couple other people chained with you. You start arguing with the people that are next to you as what these things are. And you think that the shadow is the real thing, but it's not. And they're arguing. They're even breaking up friendships and all this horrible stuff. You could even take it as far as they're like murdering each other over their interpretation of what these shadows are. Then finally, one guy escapes and he gets out. He gets out of the cave and he actually gets out of and sees the real world and realizes that everything that he experienced was just a shadow. That's all it was. It wasn't real. It wasn't actually anything tangible. And then he realizes how stupid it was that they argued about it for so long when none of them knew because they were all in the cave. So it's kind of this reflection of the human condition, because we all sort of do that. We fight about all these ideas, but there's so much that we don't know. There's so much, especially in the spirit world. Like, we know nothing about that. We're just kind of a shadow of a higher reality. And mankind has known that for millennia. Even quantum physics is starting to catch up with that finally, and starting to realize that. But that's what we are. And even if people want to be total materialists, okay, that's fine. There's still an entire universe that we have no real concept of. We only know about our little section of it. We don't know what's out there. We don't know if the universe has an edge, or if it does, what's beyond that. We don't know how many dimensions there are. There's so much we don't know. And when looked at it through that lens, it's kind of ridiculous that we fight about all these things that we just don't know. And so it's a really cool allegory, and I love it. And Mark Flynn did a phenomenal job in Forbidden Secrets of the Labyrinth. People can go to skywatchtvstore.com if they want to pick that up. Actually, I think right now it's being offered in the Justin Fall Hollow Earth Chronicles DVD package if people want to get that, which is a great movie too. But But anyway, yeah, I mean, he Mark Flynn did a phenomenal analysis of that and just how it resonates in the just human condition, the way that we're built.
Hey, by the way, are you going to the Knicks Gen 6 conference?
Yes. Yeah, I'm doing a roundtable with some of the other speakers. I think I forget which day it is. I think it's on the last day, but I'll be there. It's actually only about 40 minutes away from where I live, so it works out perfect. But yeah, I'll be there. I missed you last time. I know you were there, and I was only there for about an hour, and I missed you.
Oh man, I was looking for you, brother.
Yeah, I know. Yes, Christina actually called me and said, "Hey, Daniel Ott's here. He's looking for you." And I was like, "Well, I'll be there tomorrow." Unfortunately, I missed you.
I had a interesting little thing happened there. I went up to meet Tom Horn, just say hello to him in person, and he was glad to see me and everything. And he said, "Hey man," he said, go down that table and tell Christina to give you the book. I think it was McGinnis from McGinnis. Yeah, what is that? What's that book from McGinnis?
McGinnis?
Deep State, was it? Yeah, I think it was Deep State.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so I went down. Yeah. So I'm in line, man. The line is long to go to her table, man. There's like five women manning this table, and so people are standing there. I'm way back. All of a sudden I just get out of line, and I just walk right on up there, man. And the people say, "Hey, man, what's going on here?" I say, "Hey, Christine, you got a book? Do you have any book?" "Yep." See, that was kind of fun. Hey, but let me ask you, when you were talking about that allegory of the cave, that reminded me of the movie. The Island. You remember that movie where they were making clones underneath the desert?
Oh, Ewan McGregor. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they finally came out into the real world, and they saw a snake, didn't know what the snake was, and then they went to, they saw somebody on a motorcycle, and it was really funny because the guy says, "I don't know what that is, but I want one," and then they go to a bar and they say, "We're looking for somebody," and the bartender says, "Well, he's in the can taking a dump," and he says, He says to his girlfriend there, and he says, "Hey, I got to go find out what's happened. He's taking a dump in a can, and I got to help him or something, So it's kind of funny. But you can come out of these places and everything looks different. And You're right. And what I see is one of the things that doesn't make any difference type of thing is like the flat Earth conversation. That really, Josh, that divided a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it probably still is. And I try to say, back to how we were talking the first hour about letting people have their say. I've let people have their say about flat Earth here. It goes to it's interesting. Tell me the story. Convince me, and I'll take whatever. And I learn facts, whether or not the Earth's flat. I'll learn a lot of facts about the Earth and various things, which is good, which is the point. But when it gets to dividing people, that's just one of the titles that divides people. And the rapture, another one, pre, post, mid, 1, 2, or none. I mean, there's like 6. It's kind of like LGBT. You got to keep adding. You got to keep adding letters, man. I think they got everybody on the end of it now. Of course, they added A for animals and everything else. So I mean, that thing's just getting longer. Yeah. But so in some ways, I feel like one of the biggest things that I wanted to do in 2012 is to maybe bring somebody on and just know and attack the interview in a situation knowing that people are going to be upset, if they disagree. But I got to fight that and say, you know what, stop that. Just let somebody different, because, we're all going to go to an afterlife, and the things that we discuss and get mad at each other in this side, it just vaporizes into nothing. And when we waste, in fact, when we get older, we may even consider that. Why do we waste so many time arguing with people when we should have lifted them up or prayed for them? Because I know that the prayer for them is the last thing. But then those that do seem to say, "Well, I'll pray for you that you get saved, man, because you obviously ain't saved because you believe this and I believe that, and I've got the data to prove it." I mean, it's nasty out there. But that's one of the goals that I have for 2018. I'm going to try to do a little bit more of.
That's awesome. And I can totally get behind that. Yeah, it's unfortunate, these movements, and it doesn't even matter. At some point, if it's going to be so divisive where Christians are hating other Christians over it, at that point, it doesn't even matter what the movement is. Because, and this is on a group level, because when I talk, and I do quite often now, because when I talk about the problems with flat Earth, and it's not even the theory. I don't care anything about the theory. Mm-hmm. I don't care what shape people want to believe the Earth is. It's fine. Mm-hmm. Fine. I could go to heaven and God could be like, "Yeah, it was flat the whole time," and I could say, "Okay, well, that had no impact in my life. Good to know." Yeah, that's what it would be. But where the issue comes in is when it becomes a divisive moment, like you said, and then And then Bible verses and Jesus' words start getting taken out of context. Well, Jesus said he came to bring a sword and divide. It's like, okay, read what he said. He wasn't talking about Christians. He was talking about believers and non-believers. Like, even in a family, there's going to be a person in the family who converts to Christ and the rest of the family aren't going to. And that's the sword that divides. That's what's going to divide. It's not talking about Christians. And I did a whole presentation on this at Hear the Watchman last year. People can find it on my YouTube channel, but it's about cannibal Christians, and it's like emotionally and spiritually cannibalistic Christians who want to fight. And I mean, they're basically internet trolls. Now, of course, again, I was saying a group. Now, as individuals, I've met 2 or 3 flat earth people that I like, or flat earthers or whatever, that I actually like because they don't care that I don't believe in it. And I don't care that they do. We're friends anyway. It doesn't become a divisive thing because it's nothing to fight about. You know, who cares? I know a couple Hebrew roots people that are like that too. And, you know, some things I agree with them on, other things I don't. You're never going to find 2 Christians that are going to agree on everything. It just won't happen. So the sooner that we can kind of get past that, I think the sooner we can focus on the real important stuff. You know, have your pet theories, you know, have your interest. I mean, I'm into the quantum physics stuff. That's definitely a pet theory. You know, I take it seriously and I love it, but I'm not going to divide over somebody if they don't believe in what I'm talking about with it, because it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. What matters is the gospel. What matters is Jesus Christ. That's the important that matter. It doesn't matter what shape the earth is. It doesn't matter if you can find quantum physics in the book of Ezekiel. None of that matters when you compare it to the gospel and to the message of Jesus Christ and salvation for humanity. That's what we should really, we should use that to come together instead of all these little things to fall apart. It's the allegory of the cave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you ever heard of somebody named Sherry Shriner?
No.
All right. Well, she's one that some consider way out there. You know, I mean, she had she died. I mean, she was on the show a few times. She was one of the earliest guests we ever had, and she has some theories that are people consider way out there, Christians. And then on the YouTube comments is like, you know, you're going to burn, you're the devil, this and that, and then she died. I mean, it's like the last thing that somebody said to her was, "You're a freak," you know, and you know, and I don't mind calling somebody wearing funny hats and screaming at the sky a freak, or somebody in D.C. that corrupted the FBI, the DOJ, and the State Department. I don't mind calling them freaks because they're committing crimes. But you know, she had her faith, and that was it. But the last thing that a lot of people actually said was, you know, you're a freak, kook, and this and that. And that's no way to end things. You know, they should have said, you know what? You have the best intentions. You probably believe what you say. You know, I'll pray for you. You know, I'm not going to hate you. But, you know, and that really goes for life in general. That goes to the guy at the gas station, man, or at the store. You know, you're having a bad day, and you just want to tell the first person you meet, you know, something, you know, let loose on them. You can't do that because as you're going through life, when you meet people, you got to impart something good, because you don't know where they're at. You haven't been where they've been. You haven't learned what they've learned. And to say they're outrageously wrong and I'm perfectly correct, and I'm going to give you 15 Bible passages to prove it, you know, that's no way to go about life. We gotta leave better things in life. We'll drop that stone in the pond, but make it a good thing and let that ripple out there, rather than, you know, another way of, you know, putting something nasty out there, and because that'll have the same effect, a negative effect that a positive thing will have.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and that's so unfortunate, because what an unfortunately wasted opportunity, and that's how you know people too. You know if somebody really cares about the Christian brothers and sisters, or just even humanity in general, because what are they trying to do? Are they trying to prove themselves right, or are they trying to get at the truth? Now, I don't know the person that you were talking about, or what her theology was or anything, but let's just say it was just the craziest thing ever. You know, let's just, you know, who knows? But let's just say it was the most out there thing. My response to it, if I was emotionally invested enough where I really felt like I had to talk to this person, it wouldn't be, here's how you're wrong in all these ways. My first thing would be, well, let's find out what we have in common. You know, okay, if she's a Christian, then it's Jesus. You know, we can find common ground there. then it would be, okay, well, what led you to believe in whatever this thing is that I don't personally agree with? And then I would try to find out, where the motivation is, what the Bible verses are, what the theology is, where it comes from. And I would weigh it against my own, because I always have to keep in mind that I could be wrong too. And then the way that I would counter it is say, well, I disagree because of these reasons, and here's where here's what led me to my beliefs right now. So you do the same thing. And then you just have a talk about it, And if the other person isn't convinced, fine. It's not a big deal. It's not our responsibility to change everybody's minds. It's our responsibility to be a light of truth to the world, It's the Holy Spirit's responsibility to change everybody's minds. If God wants somebody's mind changed, or he's going to give people that opportunity. But we also need to recognize that people have free will. And if they don't want to accept it, it's just like, any Christian who goes out and tries to talk about Jesus has probably come across the atheist friend that just will not accept it, but you're still friends anyway because you like the guy or whatever. A lot of us have friends like that. And then it kind of becomes your life ministry, that you want to convince this guy someday. But it's not a divisive thing.
Well, let me tell you, I keep trying to get this YouTube video that I saw years ago. This guy is in a driveway. He's going to work, and he's backing out, and this kid keeps pulling his bicycle right behind him, and the guy gets mad, says, get out of the way. And then he gets in his car, and then he goes to the store, and he has to wait in line. He's stomping his foot and he's mad and stuff, and he's aggravated with the person. There's like 4 or 5 stops that he has, and he's getting aggravated all the way. And then they replay the video, and as the guy backs out and that kid goes behind him, it shows what the kid was thinking. And he's thinking, my dad left me. I wish I had a dad like you. And then went to the store, and the woman that made him mad and messed up his order, her husband just walked out on her, and so you don't know where people are, and some of the flat earthers and the globers, and I've seen it in my Facebook, some of the worst trolls. Now I'm preaching here too. I'm preaching here now, man, because some of the Christians can make some of the worst trolls. I gotta admit, man, trolling each other. And when the big alien, disclosure comes, we're gonna be fighting each other still. There has to be a unified message there. Something we've got to come together a little bit better than what we have, because the forces of evil have a plan. Josh, it's speaking of that, like the Democrats. Just look at it this way: they have a long-term plan. They put judges in place where need to be. Then they commit crimes. They get caught, but it's okay because they got judges in place, and to make sure there's judges that get that warp, they have people. Okay, we got to put people in the public school system to warp the kids so they can grow up, be in their safe spaces, become judges. So they have this master plan, but the other side always seems to react. Oh, we found out this is a crooked judge. Well, why weren't you putting good judges in? There's no, and that's always kind of behind the 8 ball of getting ahead of things. They're always reactive instead of proactive. But, I don't know. I'm just preaching a little bit there. Go ahead.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And we as the church, we're not supposed to be like the world that does this kind of stuff. Humanity without Christ, that's what they do. That's what like Democrats and liberals and not, of course. And when I say this, I don't mean all of them. I hate that I even have to say that. But you know what I mean. That's how they act. That's what an un-Christ-like humanity acts like. We shouldn't have anything to do with that. If we have a disagreement, we should be secure in our faith to understand that it's okay. Like, it's totally fine. Like, there are things that I don't agree with that other Christians do. It's fine. It's not a threat to my faith, and neither should my beliefs be a threat to anybody else's faith. Now, what should happen is, if it's that big of a deal, then we should just have a conversation about it, compare Bible verses, find out, what led us to where we are now. Because like everybody else, I've had trauma in my life that has probably led me to certain beliefs. And one of the best things, one of the greatest journeys a person can take is the journey of self-discovery led by Jesus Christ. Because God knows us better than we know ourselves. But the journey of self-discovery is so amazing that you get to learn what motivates you. But it starts with being honest with yourself. Whenever you say something or make a decision, or when you have a thought or a belief, honestly think, now what led me there? What actually causes me to believe this? It doesn't even matter if the belief is right or not. It could be the most truest thing ever. But what led me here? And that, or if you do something like say you snap at your kids or your wife or something, or you have a fight with a friend, or anytime something kind of goes differently than you thought it was going to. Think about now what led to that. I had years ago, I really had to start doing this because I was having a lot of problems. I was getting into drug addiction, and I was like super into New Age theology, and I was snapping at everybody. I was an angry person. Wow. And I had to think, what really led me here? And the more I thought about it, I realized it was a lot of stuff I didn't have any control over when I was a kid, like a lot of traumatic things and everything. And having that realization, instead of wasting time trying to justify everything I was doing, well, this person said that and he shouldn't have, and that's why I snapped at him. Instead of justifying things, who cares what other people do? Start thinking about why you do the things that you do, or why you believe the things that you believe. And once you do that, you start to have a lot more empathy for other people, and it starts to make more sense. You start becoming more peaceful as a person, and you get a lot of peace in your soul through this journey of self-discovery. That's what a relationship with Jesus, that's one of the greatest benefits, because who knows you better than your father, and I'm talking about your godly father, not some guy that ran out on your mom, years ago or whatever, but who's supposed to know you better than your own father? No one. I mean, I right now, my son is 4 years old, and I know him way better than he knows himself. And he keeps getting himself in trouble through all these little things that 4-year-olds do because he's a 4-year-old boy. But my job as the father is to correct him and say, no, you need to go on this path of self-discovery, but I'm going to guide you through it. Think about why you do these things. You weren't supposed to, push that boy in daycare or whatever. Why do you think that you did that? Well, he was mean to me, or he said a thing. Okay, so he said a thing. So why, instead of pushing him, did you not just say something back, or go tell the daycare lady, or whatever it is? Everybody's got their own parenting styles, but it's this path of self-discovery, and I try to instill in my kids to think about why they do the things that they do, because it's so important. No one does that. Like, no one does that. But the few that do, strangely enough, and this is weird, no liberals do it. Like, no leftists. There are conservatives and right-wing people that do it. And and this is why I brought up the atheist right-wingers before. If you find an atheist that's a right-winger, he's on a path of self-discovery. It might not be with Jesus, but he knows why he does the things that he does. Because he's more honest than a lot of the other atheists out there. A lot of leftists want to blame their problems on external things, whereas and this is why I love conservatism. Conservatives are more like, okay, well, the outside world is chaotic, I get that, but what could I have done differently? What can I do differently in the future to improve my own situation? Instead of blaming it on everything else in the world. So I think that if we as Christians could get behind that, oh man, we could do some amazing things.
Wow, all right. Okay, I tell you what, we better finish this up talking about the rest of this book here now.
Sure.
Okay, now you have some interesting pictures in here, but I do want to talk about this one chapter. It's called The Nine and Other Gods. Who are the nine, Josh?
That is a Derek Gilbert chapter. That's something that...
Well, let's just pass that on. Give me one of your chapters, man.
I am chapter 8 and above. Anything from chapter 8 and on, I can speak intelligently about.
What is your favorite chapter?
Oh, probably for me, the last two chapters, the chapter on the chaos god Leviathan. I really liked researching that, and then the chapter on how to theologically address how aliens, might exist out in the universe. Those were my two favorite. The very last chapter was actually kind of interesting, with predicting, or not really predicting, but kind of trying to pinpoint when some of this stuff might go down.
The last chapter, is that the Israel and UFO connection?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So this is really weird. And I didn't discover this. Actually, the first that I heard about it was Jeffrey Martis, an author of What Dwells Beyond, a fantastic book, which can also be purchased through skywatchtvstore.com. Fantastic book, really good research. But he talked about in the book how in the past, it seems like there's been a correlation between major events in Israel's history and events that promote the idea that there's life elsewhere in the universe. Mm-hmm. So like in 600 BC, when Jerusalem was sacked, at that same time, this philosophy of cosmic plurality, which was the idea that there could be life on other worlds out there, that's when it started. So you can trace that throughout Israel's history. One of the biggest ones was, and it's never an exact date. It's usually within like a few months or a year. But in 1947, 1948, between those 2 years, you get Roswell, but you also get Israel becoming a nation again. Now, Roswell was like the biggest UFO thing like ever. Anybody who, people who don't even know anything about ufology or anything, they know what Roswell was. They've at least heard the story. Well, in Israel's history, Israel becoming a nation again is like the biggest news in Israel's history in modern times. So I kind of took that idea and took it a step further. And there are a lot of correlations that I was able to kind of bring up. And the weirdest thing is when I started comparing the dates of all these things, of the major ones, there were all these weird anniversaries that seemed to point to end of 2017, beginning of 2018, maybe a little bit beyond. Because again, there's no exact dates on any of this stuff, but it usually ends up being around like a year, or a few months, or somewhere around there. So there was like the 70th anniversary of Israel becoming a nation again in Roswell. That was like a big one of this year. And there was a big one for, I don't have the list in front of me, but there was a big one for the 50th, the 40th, the 20th, all these things. So I went through it and looked at the biblical significance of all those numbers, and they all correlated to the word generation. They all correlated to, the word generation has different meanings throughout the scripture. It could be 120 years, which actually that was the first Zionist Congress, but that was also the Aurora, Texas UFO. What was 120 years ago this year, or maybe last year. I think it was this year, but it was 120 years ago. That was a huge event. It actually wasn't until Roswell that something bigger happened. But all of these time sequences that corresponded to the word generation kept coming up. Now, of course, there's this kind of vaguish sort of prophecy that's been interpreted like a million times over in a lot of different ways. And this is why I try to be real careful when I talk about this stuff, because I'm not predicting anything and I'm not prophesying anything. I'm not saying the end of the world is etata or the rapture is whenever. I don't do that. Okay. But I do look at patterns and I think it's interesting. So there's a verse that talks about the fig tree generation, that basically when you see the budding of the fig tree, then you know that this generation is, basically the last one. I'm paraphrasing, but now it depends on what you mean by generation. Is a generation 70 years? There are verses that say it is. Is it 80 years? There are some other verses
Josh,
that say it is.
Let me ask you, are you talking about the timetable that may set an expected date for disclosure or for contact?
That's what I explored in the chapter, because I was wondering, could this correlate somehow? Because for some reason, these major events in Israel's history are correlating with UFO events. So could it be an official disclosure, or at least the beginning of something like that? So I went through all the math and I went through everything in the book. And I said, first thing I said, if I'm going to predict anything, I'm going to predict that nothing's going to happen. That's my prediction. Okay. But I said, if these trends are true, it seems that something is coming to a head in late 2017, early 2018. Mm-hmm. And if these trends if they continue the way that they seem to be, I would suspect it would have something to do with the idea that there's life out there in the universe, cosmic plurality. It would probably be something having to do with official disclosure. It might not be actual official disclosure, but it might be the starting point of it. It could be. So like a day or a couple of days, it wasn't long. It was only like a couple of days after the book was released. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, two major things happened. You had President Trump say that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel and that he was going to move the embassy there. Mm-hmm. And it was an official thing, and the world went nuts about it. Everybody was all mad about it, and it was a big event in Israel's history. And at the same time, the news media started taking the story seriously about the Pentagon's secret research into UFOs and all this from like 10 years ago. But that's when that story came out. And they were within a day of each other that these two things happened. If there is going to be some official disclosure thing, that would be the very first point, because that was the first time that a story broke where the news media was actually taking it seriously.
Well, also, Josh, that was right at the time when the Air Force pilots released videos of their encounters. Yes. Right then, I was thinking, now how did they get permission to get Air Force videos, which have to be, secret, classified. And that's all over the internet. And it's all over Yahoo News and everything. And everybody's seen that videos, and you can hear them talking. It's like, well, did the pilots go and ask him for that video? Did they just give it to him? And what's that all about? But that was right in that time frame.
Yep. Yeah. That was at the same exact time. And just the timing was, it was just impeccable. And I was blown away because I am certainly not a prophet. And I didn't even think that, like I said, in the book, I'm really cautious about it. And I said in the book, if I'm going to predict anything, it's going to be that nothing's going to happen. It's going to be that this is one of those things where somebody gets a hold of and they think that they're a prophet and then they predict something and nothing happens. And I said specifically in the book, I'm not that. So, but here's where the patterns lead. So it wouldn't surprise me necessarily if something like that happened. Well, it's the first time that this was actually taken seriously by the media. Mm-hmm. If there is an official disclosure moment, whether it's 20 years from now, people will look back and they will see the end of 2017, December specifically of 2017 as the day that it actually started, the day that the ball got rolling. And it was that same time that Jerusalem was announced as the capital of Israel, in the same time where Trump said that he was going to move the embassy there, and the world went nuts. And the UN went nuts. And then Trump, which was awesome, said, well, fine, we just won't fund your countries anymore. Good luck.
I love that. I did love that, man. And it was like, and people said, we don't want your money anyway. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Hey, well, Josh, we're at the end of the broadcast. Talk again about where people can get that book, and tell any other websites or projects you've got going on. How can they see what you're doing?
Absolutely. I am all over the place. So I am everywhere on social media. The best place to get the book is go to officialdisclosure.com. It's really easy to remember. People can go to skywatchtvstore.com and get it there too. It's the same deal. But officialdisclosure.com is a little easier to remember. Mm-hmm. They can go there. They can get the book with all sorts of extra free materials that aren't released anywhere else. You're not going to be able to find this stuff on Amazon or anywhere else. So over $400 worth of free materials that they can get when they buy the book at officialdisclosure.com. I'm also on Facebook. I have a couple of YouTube channels, youtube.com/Into the Multiverse. That's the show that I host for Skywatch TV. Mm-hmm. And also youtube.com/Josh Peck Disclosure. I have daily videos that talk about current events and just kind of my own spin on things. So people can check that out. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I am pretty much anywhere. But if they go to joshpeckdisclosure.com, that is the central hub for everything. joshpeckdisclosure.com. That's the central hub. People can find me there.
Okay. All right, Josh Peck, I appreciate you coming on the Edge Television broadcast. Can we have you on again sometime?
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for dealing with all the rescheduling and everything. Hey, I'm happy that we were able to do this.
God's timing, brother.
Amen.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody, that was Josh Peck talking about the day the earth stands still. Next week, we're going to have with us Cody Snodgrass, and he's going to be talking about some conspiracy theories, all right, talking about the deep state. It's going to get very, very risky broadcast next week. We'll have 2 weeks. We'll have Dr. Ted Brewer back on the program. We're going to have a good round table talking about the week's events. He is hilarious in his own right. So there you go. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and our Instagram, and of course subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to be back next week, same bat channel. Tell all your friends about the program. This program will be put up into our YouTube channel and into our TuneIn Radio playlist. Daniel Ott for The Edge. Bye-bye.